30 years before Jim Jones stood in front of his followers, he was a well-liked, respected figure in the progressive community. In the late 1940s and early 50s, Jim Jones was known for his charity work and for founding one of the first mixed-race churches in the Midwest. His work helped desegregate Indiana and earned him a devoted following among civil rights activists, until it all went south and bodies were dropping all around him. From Indianapolis, he moved towards California, where he and his church continued to promote their messages of compassion. They would emphasize how they helped the poor and raised them, including those who were marginalized and excluded from society's prosperity. However, behind closed doors, they were embracing socialism and hoped that in time the country would be ready to accept their theory. It is here Jim started to explore faith healing. To be able to draw in larger crowds and bring in more money for his cause, he started to promise miracles, saying he could literally remove cancer from people. But it wasn't cancer that he was magically pulling out of people's bodies. It was bits of rotten chicken that he produced to show as a magic act.
Salutary kiss of greeting to your neighbor. Let's fill this atmosphere with warmth and love. How much I love you. How much I love you. Now as we meditate, God is love. Love is a healing remedy. We're going to reach out to areas where man has seemed to have difficulty. As we concentrate that the gifts of the Holy Spirit might function, or what the secularist might speak of as the paranormal, let us believe. Let us believe. Sister Ingram, you're concerned about the losing of your sight. You're not able to see me clearly. Things just blur to you. You have to stumble around lately through crowds and are not able to see even people's faces close up to you clearly.
That's true.
You've told me nothing about your condition. Is that
No,
correct?
I haven't.
Give that little sweetheart a little bit of love. Thank you, baby. Peace. Now, take your glasses off. Let's just dare in our faith. We've seen Sister Brown here, who was blind, totally healed. We saw one of our sisters blind from her childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see. Now, look at my face. I'm going to hold up some fingers. You concentrate hard. I love you. The people love you. And most importantly, Christ loves you. What do you see? How many fingers?
3.
One finger. You don't even need your glasses, child. Let's all be thankful as she cries back there. Let's cry and rejoice with her. Edie? Are your fingers numb in your right hand? And having enormous headaches in your head?
Yes.
Reach your hands out. Reach your hand out to me. Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone? Conley. What a sensation about you. Did you once lose a loved one, I think the name of James?
Yes, that's my brother.
He was 14 years of age. And he was reading something, and someone asked him for what he had, and he didn't want to give it.
Yes,
and
he did.
That person shot him to death.
Yes, he did.
I'm saying this to give you faith, so that you can mount up, because you've been feeling pain here in the chest, and in the back, and you injured your foot some time ago, and you've been having constant pain in it, where you had to move around with a chair.
Yes, I did.
I do not know you, and you've told me or no one else the things I just mentioned.
No,
Is that
you
true?
sure haven't.
Now, where's your pain?
Don't feel it, dear.
The doctor has relieved you from your work. In the second row, you have a bad spinal condition.
Yes.
And your hip is injured.
Yes.
Step from your wheelchair. Begin to step from your wheelchair. Try it. Just try it. Just try it. We have nothing to lose. We have no face to lose, because we've said we're no panacea. But I have seen more healings here than I've ever seen any place. I love you. Jesus Christ loves you. Jehovah Jireh. All the goodness of all the world's great religions, in the name and the mercy and the goodness of Jesus, wherein I stand. Come forth, my dear. Stand up. Take that step. Bless your heart. Take that step. Take that step. Now, move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward, darling. You can do it. Move forward. Move forward. Child, sweetheart, would you step out my way just a moment so that I can just keep my love thought on her? Now, move forward. Freely, freely, freely. Now begin to exercise the hip. Begin to exercise the joint. I love you. Christ loves you. The people love you. Now, sisters, walk briskly. Walk. Walk briskly. Walk. Walk.
Him and his team took this healing aspect to show the goodness in them, but it was all a deception which they rationalised for the greater good, until it all started to crash down on them. Jim became increasingly paranoid about the world, and his speeches began to reference a coming doomsday, the result of a nuclear apocalypse brought by government mismanagement. He enjoyed speaking to his followers, the world, and having strong relationships with politicians, but it is here the media began to turn against him. Several high-profile members of the People's Temple defected, and the conflict was both vicious and public. As the traitors, they criticised the church, and in turn the church smeared them as well. A group of primarily well-off white women oversaw the running of the temple, while most of the congregants were black. The meetings of high-positioned individuals grew more secretive as they planned increasingly complicated fundraising schemes, a combination of staged healings, trinket marketing, and solicitous mailings. At the same time, it was becoming clear to everyone that Jim wasn't particularly invested in the religious aspects of his church. Christianity was the bait, not the goal. He was interested in the social progress he could achieve with a fanatically devoted following at his back. His social goals became openly radical, and he began to attract the interest of the Marxist leaders as well as violent leftist groups. The shift and the defections in which Jim sent search parties and a private plane to reclaim the deserters, brought the media down on what was now being widely regarded as a cult. As stories of scandal and abuse proliferated in the papers, Jim made a run for it, taking his church with him. They settled in Guyana, a country that appealed to Jim because of its non-extradition status and its socialist government. Guyana's authorities warily allowed the cult to begin construction on their utopic compound, and in 1977 the People's Temple arrived to take up residence. Now isolated, Jim was free to implement his vision of a pure Marxist society, and it became a lot grimmer than people had anticipated. Upon hours and hours of work during the day and evenings filled with lectures, as he spoke at length of his fears for society and X-rated defectors, on movie nights, entertaining films were replaced with Soviet-style documentaries about the dangers, excesses and vices of the outside world. Rations were limited as the compound had been built on poor soil. Everything had to be imported via negotiations on shortwave radios, the only way for anyone to communicate with the world outside. Then they began the punishments. Rumours escaped into Guyana that cult members were harshly disciplined, beaten, and locked in coffin-sized prisons or left to spend the night in dry wells. Jim himself was said to be losing his grip on reality. His health was deteriorating, and by treatment, he began to take a nearly lethal combination of amphetamines and pentobarbital. One of the survivors would later recall, he would tell us that in the United States, African Americans were being herded into concentration camps, that there was genocide on the street. They were coming to kill and torture us because we'd chosen what he called the socialist track. He said they were on their way.
This is the hottest part of the entire year, and they're doing real well. We've not lost any chickens. This is a heating lamp. These are the small chickens in another one of the coops besides the 8 coops. These are small babies that we've just been hatched. These are chickens, again a different breed of chickens that just hatched, in addition to the 8 other chicken houses. See the heating units to keep them warm, everything modern automatic water feeders, everything clean floor base with the wood chips that we can, there's 6 inches of those that we remove so that we can keep absolutely sanitary condition. We've lost none of these chickens either. This is a feed barn packed for the thousands and thousands of chickens we now have, and there's the pasture for our cattle. Back over here is the area that we're clearing for, way to my right, Mike, is the area that we're clearing for more planting. Potatoes and carrots and eddos and papaya, citrus, all kinds of various fruit trees that you've never heard of in your life. And these fences we made all of ourselves, so there were hardly any cost to them. We lumbered our own wood. No, wood you see standing is not dead wood. It's been purposefully made that way, prepared for lumbering so we can build housing for all of our beautiful family. That's Anthony. He is so delightful worker. He's a farm supervisor over the many, many dozens of employees we have. He just come in with a tractor with supplies from the workers just over that, about a mile of pasture you see there in the background. Just one small portion. Several square miles of pasture there, and pasture to the left. There's pasture way back several miles. Our property is, 12 miles long, 7 miles wide.
The rows, only a few pigs. Many we have in Jonestown.
The youngsters in with the piglets. No, pat them, just rub them. That's it. That's a nice goat. Yeah, we got all kinds of nice little piglets. And here's Charlie the boar in the background. This is one of the many generators that we've purchased with our sweat and blood. We have generators all over our property that gives us power for everything we need. This is the cassava mill, which we are now making over $30 a day in sauces, and we're doing it on just handmade basis. We're going to get some equipment to do make noodles also, which will be fantastic. Then we'll be able to talk more in the big money. This young man is making peeling sweet potatoes. Now, just to the right, I'll show you the process where we don't have modern facilities yet. There's our generator, but we have to boil our sauce from the cassava, and we're making over $30 a day just from hand boiling. When we get modern equipment, we'll be able to do a great deal more. This is our grinder, and there's our compressor for the cassava back in the background. Now one of the ladies is making juice. You see the juice, Mike? She's pouring in juice that we make over 30. She alone for us makes over $30 US a day. Now if we had more modern equipment, which we're going to get later as we can afford it, we'll be able to make a tremendous amount. These are meat sauces. Are you going? And rice sauces. Are you going? Yeah. And back here are many bottles of it. Bottles and bottles that we have made today. It's more than $30 a day now. A bottle like this, I've forgotten the price. I can tell you what this price is. This is $1.20. $1.20. Because it's a very rare. It's a roll. Stacks of rice, bags and bags, and way back in the dish, the background is the powdered cassava, which we make flour from, we make cornstarch type from, we make our sauces from. All that looks like just dust. That's all of our ground. This is the way it is if it's what it ought to be. The American bananas are nothing like these. Right, Jim? Yeah. Oh, we have row after row of these. Whole warehouse full. We even sell bananas now also because we're trying to make money. We need money so badly to take care of all of our family to save them.
Jim had begun to raise the idea of revolutionary suicide, a last resort that he and his congregation would pursue if the enemy showed up at their gates. He even had his followers rehearse their own deaths, calling them together in the central courtyard and asking them to drink from a large vat he had prepared for just an occasion. It's not clear whether his congregation knew those moments were drills. Survivors would later report having believed they would die. When they don't, they were told that it had been a test that they had drunk proved them worthy. It was in that context that US Congressman Leo Ryan came to investigate. Once Leo Ryan came into the picture, it blew up everything that Jonestown had become. Leo had been friends with the People's Temple member whose mutilated body had been found 2 years prior, and since then he and several other US representatives had taken a keen interest in the cult. When reports started to come out of Jonestown, it suggested that it was far from the racism and poverty-free utopia that Jim had sold his members on. Leo decided to check on the conditions for himself. 5 days before the JonesTown Massacre, Leo flew to Guyana along with a delegation of 18 people, including several members of the press, and met with Jim and his followers. The settlement wasn't the disaster Leo had expected. The conditions were lean. Leo felt that most cultists seemed to genuinely want to actually be there. Even when several members were asked to leave with his delegation, Leo reasoned that a dozen defectors out of 600 or so adults weren't cause for concern. Jim was devastated. Despite Leo's assurances that his report would be favourable, Jim was convinced that the People's Temple had failed the inspection and Leo was going to call in the authorities. As he was already paranoid and his health was failing, Jim sent his security team after Leo and his crew, who had just arrived at the nearby Port Kaituma airstrip. The People's Temple shot and killed 4 delegation members and 1 defector, wounding several others. Leo Ryan died after being shot more than 20 times. As the congressman was dead, Jim and the People's Temple were done. However, Jim wasn't anticipating an arrest. He had told his congregation that the authorities would be parachuting in at any moment, then sketched a vague picture of a terrible fate at the hands of a deranged, corrupt government. He encouraged his congregation to die now rather than face their torture. He said, "Die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. I tell you, I don't care how many screams you hear. I don't care how many anguished cries. Death is 1,000,000 times preferable to 10 more days of this life. If you knew what was ahead of you, you'd be glad with it done tonight." The audio of his speech and the ensuing suicide survives. On the tape, an exhausted Jim says he sees no way forward, he's tired of living and wants to choose his own death. One woman courageously disagrees. She says she's not afraid to die, but she thinks the children at least deserve to live. The People's Temple shouldn't give up and let their enemies win. Jim tells her the children deserve peace, and the crowd shouts the woman down, telling her she's just afraid to die. Then the group who killed the congressman return, announcing their victory, and the debate ends as Jim begs someone to hurry with the medication. Those that administered the drugs, which is suggested to be through syringes, are heard on tape assuring the children that the people who have ingested the drug aren't crying from pain. It's only that the drugs are a little bitter tasting. Others express their sense of obligation to Jim. They wouldn't have made it this far without him, and they're now taking their lives out of duty. Some, who hadn't ingested the poison, wondered why the dying look like they're in pain when they should be happy. One man is grateful that his child won't be killed by the enemy or raised by the enemy to be a dummy. At this point, Jim started telling them to hurry up. He tells the adults to stop being hysterical and exciting the screaming children. Once the Guyana authorities showed up the following day, they expected resistance, guards and guns, and an irate Jim Jones waiting for them at the gates. But when they arrived, it was eerily quiet. I quote, "All of a sudden they start to stumble, and they think that maybe these revolutionaries placed logs on the ground to trip them up, and now they're going to start shooting from ambush. And then a couple of soldiers look down, and they can see through the fog, and they start screaming, because there are bodies everywhere, almost more than they can count, and they are so horrified." But when they located Jim's body, it was clear to them that he hadn't taken the poison. After watching his followers in agony, he chose instead to shoot himself in the head. The dead were a grim collection of around 300 people, who were also children, who had been fed with a cyanide-laced flavor aid by their parents and loved ones. Another 300 were elderly men and women who depended on younger cultists for support. As for the rest of the people killed in the JonesTown Massacre, there were a mix of true believers and the hopeless. In a book written by John R. Hall, he says, "The presence of armed guards shows at least implicit coercion, though the guards themselves reported their attentions to visitors in glorious terms and then took the poison, nor was the situation structured as one of individual choice. Jim Jones proposed a collective action, and in the discussion that followed, only one woman offered extended opposition. No one rushed up to rip over the vat of flavor aid. Wittingly, unknowingly, or reluctantly, they all took the poison."